Okay.
All right, welcome folks to this meeting of the Somerville Bicycle Advisory Committee. My name is Tom Lamar and I'm chair of the committee. We're going to start with a roll call, first of community representatives, then of ex officios. We'll give any in-person guests a chance to introduce themselves after, and any guests on the Zoom are welcome to pass along a message in the Q&A if they so desire. Right, so we'll start with a roll call and a little icebreaker. Tell us about an accessory you find very useful while biking. So I'll start us off. My favorite accessory is the backpack that I use to bike around with my dog. She fits in there perfectly. She loves getting a little breeze and getting to go to a dog park that would be too far away to walk to. With that, I'll pass it to Lena.
Hi, I'm Lena Webb, the vice chair of the committee. My favorite accessory is my Burley trailer, specifically the replacement for the Burley trailer flatbed that got stolen at Porter Square after 4 years. So it helps me haul dirt, like mulch, dehumidifier, like big stuff. Like you can really use it. So that's like an awesome accessory that's like really changed how I can acquire larger goods and not have a car.
Next up, Ted Billman.
Hey folks, Lena, you stole mine. So in that case, I will go with my handy dandy CO2 cartridges.
Beautiful. All right, I did not see Adrian, so next up is Kat. The icebreaker for anyone joining us is tell us about an accessory you find really useful when biking.
Hey all, good evening all, and mine is definitely my Yep bike seat. Again, similar to haul beloved child along with me everywhere I bike. No dog, but definitely child. Love that thing.
Awesome. Seeing hand raise on our Zoom with that intentional.
I think that was me.
All right, what do you want to say? You can say whatever you want.
He's got to wait his turn.
Yeah. Sure.
Doing the theater freedom. So next up, Captain Lang.
Hello everyone, greetings from my kitchen. My favorite bike accessory, the one I'm most proud of is I have a handlebar bag and I have a bunch of patches on it from places that I have biked. And it was really kind of difficult to get them on. I hand sewed them, but I feel really cool being able to display kind of like my bike adventures with a little patch. So that's my best accessory, and in the handlebar bag goes everything. My lunch and a layer and a six-pack and all kinds of stuff.
Love it. Next up, Paul Morgan.
Hi, I'm gonna go with cell phone holder. Operate the GPS on the phone and whatnot.
Paul, can you elaborate which one you have in the chat, because I'm in the market for one, or email.
Yeah, I've had a few and a lot of them have broken. I might have one that is not breaking.
Good.
Right. Next up, I believe Amanda will not be present tonight. I don't see Maria, so we'll go to Ian.
I can't use the trailer as an accessory because my cargo bike is just a bike. It's not an accessory.
Mine's a flat.
I considered saying, you know, accessory or feature of your bike, but you know,
Yeah.
we do icebreakers every month and it's always about bikes. So
Maybe your whole
Yeah.
cargo bike is.
So, I mean, the cargo bike's just a
Light
bike, it's not an
accessory.
accessory, but I've had this speaker for like, 10 years.
Those are good.
it's waterproof, it's Bluetooth and rechargeable and all that, and the amount of crappy weather biking that is made instantly better by just putting on something with a high BPM, and all of a sudden you're just across the city in 33-degree torrential downpour, and you're like, that wasn't so bad. Or the kids are like, it's cold out, we don't want to go on the bike. Well, what do you want to listen to? Ooh, can we put on, I don't know, what's the latest pop thing? Yeah, so It's a lot of stuff I don't wanna listen to.
Second
Play it on
runner
the
up.
speaker, But, it's great. If you have kids especially, get a speaker, makes winter so much better. Everyone else should
Agreed.
get one too, because it makes everything better.
Agreed.
So members I see, so let's hear from our ex officios, Greg and then Rishika and our ex officio Adam.
Hey.
Greg Hannafin, transportation planner for the mobility division. I don't actually have many bike, I guess, amenities, but I do use the blue bikes as like a way to carry stuff around. So I'll use blue bikes with their basket to,
And straps. Built-in bungees are critical.
yeah, for grocery shopping.
Yeah.
You know, my trailer may have gotten stolen, but I'm like most bitter about the bungees. Like they were the perfect bungees and they went with the cart. But yes, I like the built-in bungees on blue
Mhm.
bikes a whole lot. They've come in handy.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the baskets are like the perfect size.
you really have to choose your bike carefully though, because sometimes people will like wrap them up or they're, yeah.
Yeah, and like undo it. Rishka.
Yeah, Rishika Thalpan. I'm the community outreach coordinator with the mobility division. I was gonna say the same. I don't have my own bike at the moment, so only blue bikes. And I feel like every time I use the basket, I'm always kind of stretching the strap to its like end, and I'm always kind of testing to see how much more can I hold in this basket. It's always fun to kind of get like an old bike and a new bike and see how much they've been stretched, but that would be mine.
Adam.
Hey everyone, Adam Polinsky, Senior Planner for the City of Somerville. Here tonight to talk about the Elm Beacon Connector Project. Mine is pretty simple. It's just a coffee cup holder. I love riding my bike and I also really love coffee. And those two things have always felt very incompatible to me. And then I got a little like bungee thing that can go out over at least some of the less aggressive potholes in Somerville without completely spilling the coffee. And now I'm a happy man in the morning. It's great.
Where do you get your coffee?
Oh, you're not, coffee aficionados will hate me, but I'm a big Dunkin' guy.
Hey, that's
Yeah.
it's in your blood. It's in your blood.
I mean, it's not really coffee, so it's fine. We can all have it.
All right, sure, well. I'll take
Adam,
it.
can you throw your last name in the chat just so I can get it for the minutes?
Yeah, sure, someone.
Thank you.
I don't want that.
Yes. No, no. Let's see, all right, I do not see any other guests present in person. We have sometimes called on guests in the Zoom, but I'm going to say process wise, we get their names from the Zoom, and I think it better aligns with expectations to not explicitly calling people on a webinar. But anyone on the webinar, feel free to weigh in on the Q&A at any point, and we'll also have some opportunities for public comment. All right. I see that Alex Frieden has now arrived. Alex, we're gonna roll call. Our icebreaker is tell us about an accessory that is key for your biking experience.
Oh, that's a tough one. Hi, I'm Alex Frieden, Ward 2 resident. A key accessory is my Showers Pass jacket I'm currently wearing, which Ian as well.
Yep. All right, staff, just to check, are there any other community members that we're expecting who are not present yet?
That's everyone is here right now.
Yeah. All right. So with that, I'll mention we have several procedural items. We also have committee elections for chair, vice chair, and secretary, several other topics, and we'll spend most of our time on a detailed engineering review of Elm Beacon. I'm going to say let's do the committee election slightly later in the meeting, just on the off chance that any other interested members do show up later. And any other time constraints, anything to take out of order? Adam, any preference on when we do Elm Beacon?
Well, I'll be here the whole time.
All right.
Yeah, I know Adrian can't make it. I haven't heard from Maria, but I know that her schedule has not always lined up with the meetings, so.
All right.
I think everyone else is present.
All right. With that, next up, our acting secretary is Kat. I know you've indicated that you are all set. Yeah, let us know if you have any questions throughout the meeting about taking minutes.
We're good. Thank you.
Great. Our next item is approval of last month's meeting minutes. Thank you, Paul, for taking those minutes. Any comments, questions, suggested changes before we move to approve those minutes? Okay. Seeing none, I suggest that a member motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the
Alright,
minutes.
motion by Lena, seconded by Paul. All members in favor, please say aye, raise your hand, otherwise make your vote known.
Aye.
Bye.
Alright, hands down, meeting minutes are approved. Let's see, Kat, if it's all right, we'll maybe actually take your item next for endorsement of the Boston Cyclist Union statement regarding being statement of bike posts.
Sure. So would like to make a motion for us to the Somerville Bike Advisory Committee to I guess I don't know the technical term, but basically sign on or indicate our support for the Boston Cyclist Union statement about the removal of flex posts in Boston, which Thomas just put in the chat. Thank you.
Yeah. And so I'll just use as a good example to mention procedurally. So the committee, of course, primarily focuses on giving advice to the city of Somerville or to credit within the city of Somerville, but we do also, when appropriate, sign on to statements in other cities and typically follow the procedure of amplifying a statement from an existing advisory committee or advocacy group in that city rather than kind of getting into the nitty-gritty ourselves. So with that, let's maybe have a little discussion and see if members would be comfortable endorsing the statement. My suggestion is that we kind of either say we are comfortable or aren't comfortable and don't focus too much on the details, but with that, let's open it up. I see a hand from Ian. Anyone raise your hands as we go?
Generally comfortable doing this. I'm not sure if we're really supposed to, but I also don't entirely care because this is a safety issue that we can easily stand behind. I am curious if there's any way that we can tie this back to Somerville, which would then be a very clear way for us to support our residents. So for instance, is there anything happening like on the Somerville-Charleston border that, could impact cyclists coming from Somerville into Charleston or, other areas that we could say, hey, you've done this thing and it's now really dangerous and please stop. Because then we have absolutely all the jurisdiction to go and weigh in there. If we're saying, well, on the other side of the river, like down in Dorchester, you did a thing that was dumb, like it's a little less clear, but I also don't entirely care. So like we could just say what we want and that's fine from my perspective.
All right, I see a hand raised from Kat.
Yeah, so to explain the rationale of this, I think the argument was sort of twofold and for 7 years I used to work and commute into Boston. And so I think there's a very strong article, even if it's not directly infrastructure, is representing the residents as a whole and recognizing that Boston's a major job center. I'm sure there's some, I'm trying to quickly Google and I'm sure the city might have the number of Somerville residents who work in Boston for jobs. And then two was the irony that I believe our committee was even asked for support, recognizing that commute pattern is very common to actually sign on support bike to work day, which I felt was I don't think we need to get into that in any letter of support, but there's definitely a disconnect there if we recognize that it's our residents who are biking into Boston for both I guess not just work but pleasure as well. But it felt like it immediately impacts our safety, even if it doesn't directly border us.
I like that argument.
That resonates with me. Right. Any other questions or comments before we move to vote?
I guess I'll just say I support making a statement and also, I just think removing those flex posts renders those bike lanes ineffective because there's so much parking in Boston. There's so much people are just gonna park in it. I am disappointed to see that kind of policy reversal. And I already had avoided biking in Boston for a long time personally because it was stressful and it took a bit to coax me over. And a great part of that was these bike lanes and you open that space up and people are gonna put their cars there. So I feel like it's not just about the flex post, it's about rendering those bicycle lanes like neutering them, literally.
Let's take one or two more
Yeah.
comments on this and then we'll move to a vote.
What is
Ian?
the actual vote then? Or what are we just endorsing this written statement from someone else? Are we trying to craft our own statement on top of why we are endorsing a written statement by someone else?
Mhm.
I'm just not clear what exactly we're voting on.
Yeah, so my suggestion, and Kat, feel free to suggest otherwise, my suggestion would be that the committee endorse this specific statement from the Boston Cyclist Union expressing concerns about the removal of flex posts and asking for their rapid reinstatement. I don't know if you've had a chance to read through in detail, but it, certainly feels to me like things that I do not think we would consider controversial from our perspective.
Oh,
And so then we can express that support either by, adding our name onto an existing letter in the future that we think conveys the spirit of that, or writing our own letter as we see fit. But kind of knowing that we're confident on the policy statement that we're endorsing, I think is sufficient.
okay, that makes sense. Just want to make sure I understand, because I do like the idea of tying it back to Somerville in some way. Kat's mention of, well, our residents are trying to go there. We're trying to increase our bike share, our bike mode share of commuting Boston jobs. Like tying it back in some way is makes me feel better about it. But otherwise, I'm in support.
Great.
So also tying it back in, like that could be something that like the media and outreach group can do, like we can say, like, we signed on to this and like, here's why. And like can communicate that, broadly.
Yeah, exactly. And just, procedurally, again, using this as an example, it is reasonable for the committee to either bring it, which is somewhat preferable when the timing and convenience works out, but it's also very reasonable to kind of have a policy statement before that we endorse. So I will suggest, if Kat is okay, that we slightly modify our motion to say that we're endorsing the statement on behalf of Somerville residents who travel into the many Somerville residents who travel into Boston by bike. So one hand from Ted. So let's hear one final comment and then move to a vote.
I was gonna just echo what you just said, Tom, that I think that I'm fine, especially saying that many Somerville residents bike into Boston as a final destination or a desired destination.
Thank you, Ted. All right, with that, let's move to a vote on Kat's motion to endorse the statement from the Boston Cyclist Union regarding immediate reinstatement of flex posts. And we are endorsing that on behalf of the many Somerville residents who travel into Boston by bicycle. Do we have a second for that motion? Seconded by Ian. All members in favor, please raise your hand, say aye, otherwise make your vote no.
Hi.
A literal eye.
Thank you.
I
Motion is passed.
The other
I did like I do.
So from
Uh,
a tactical perspective, cool that we voted, awesome. We presumably have to do some work to actually like get it out of the ether of our minutes. What happens
Yes.
next?
So yeah, kind of for now, the most important thing is that the minutes should accurately reflect a motion that is passed endorsing the statement. And then I think it is reasonable for either you or working with the committee officers to work on the best way to express that endorsement. And that is fine for individual members to push forward outside a meeting. So I don't know that entirely answered it, but I can follow up with you more specific. But so one way or another, we'll either sign on to an existing letter of some form or find the right place to send a letter. Good. Cool. Anything else on that item?
Is there an upcoming vote or is there a petition to which BCU is asking folks to sign on? That would be appropriate to send a letter of support with.
That is a good question. I have not seen one myself, which is part of why it seemed appropriate to kind of endorse this statement, and then we can express that how we see fit in the future. I don't know if anyone else is aware of one. Yeah. Do not, and again, just using this as a procedural example, once the committee has voted on a policy at a meeting, it is fine to kind of execute on announcing and expressing that policy offline over email, etc. All right. Our next item is committee elections for chair, vice chair, and secretary. So as I mentioned, I will be stepping down. I very much intended to remain an active member of the committee, but I've been chair since 2019-ish. Meant to look up when it actually started, but it's been a while. I've enjoyed it. I've been very proud of what we've accomplished during that time, both in terms of bike network plan, safe routes ordinance, or partnership with many other groups during that time. But I am also very much looking forward to others taking a leadership role here and bringing their own spin on that committee. So I will be stepping down as chair. Over the last 2 months, put out a call for anyone interested to nominate, to express interest in any of the 3 positions of chair, vice chair, and secretary. And for those 3 positions, I have heard a total of 3 people express interest, 1 in each position. As it turns out, some of it takes some, a little bit of cajoling. I promise it is a fun thing to do. So Lena has expressed interest in chair. Ted Feldman has expressed interest in vice chair, and Paul Morgan has expressed interest in being secretary. I would love to give these folks a minute to speak briefly or move into any committee discussion, but also kind of wanted to mention that up front so that everyone has context. With that, let me pass it to Lena and then Ted and Paul briefly, in that order, briefly, for anything to say now, or if not, they're welcome to, say anything they want when they're leading the next meetings.
I had something in my eye. So I was gonna ask you, Tom, when did you start on the committee? Like, when did you join Ridge?
Started attending in 2015-ish. I forget when I first went to get versus.
Okay, so.
Officially joined.
Okay, I started, we had to do this 6 meetings or whatever, so I joined the committee in 2016, and I joined because I met Ken Carlson, the chair prior to Tom, at Joe Lavins's ghost bike ceremony, the man who was killed by a truck. And I did not know that person, but I bike past there every day, and I didn't know what a ghost bike was in 2016, and I learned, and I got so mad, I just got so mad the more I learned about him and like his family. And there was Ken, who was like, why don't you join the Somerville Bike Committee so that you can channel this anger you're expressing into meaningful change? And I was like, aye. So I started coming to meetings. I ended up joining the eval and engineering subcommittee meeting. I like wept over the fact that we weren't going to do a bus lane on Holland Street one time. So I'm like, really, I don't know. I've been a part of this committee for almost a decade, and I am invested in it. And I think Tom did such a great job of like getting us through a tough time with COVID, because so much of what we do is more increasingly, kind of whether we like it or not, being the representative for cyclists in Somerville. And I think that, or just like the benefits of it, the positive aspects of it. And it was hard because we had fewer members, we couldn't have outreach events. And so I'm really excited about that strong subcommittee that I've seen the minutes and the emails between. That's really going to be awesome. I'm really excited about that. And continuing to have the engineering evaluation subcommittee where, we fulfill the A part of SBAC, because we are an advisory committee. So like, we are going to be giving advice to the city, and, we are going to do it in a thoughtful and respectful way. And that's how we're going to make change and like have a meaningful connection with the arm of the city that can affect these really important changes, like even to the mayor's level and, city council, all of that. So yeah, I'm invested in the committee. I'm happy to step up and fill Tom's big shoes, and, bear with me. I've been, there's the burden of that. You need to know more procedural stuff. And, I've been just like, hey, it's the bike committee. So Tom has started documenting certain things about that, and I really appreciate that. I'm gonna, as Tom is gonna continue to be a member of the committee, I'm going to lean on him, sorry, and obviously ask for patience and, just have like an open kind of situation, yeah, so,
Thank you, Lena. All right, Ted, any brief comments?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Lena. Yeah, so similar to Lena, I've been part of the committee for a while and I'm also deeply invested. So I think I first learned of the bike committee because I went to a gathering including a ward counselor and this guy named Ken Carlson at a home in 2017 about the Webster Ave project. And then Ken said, "Oh, by the way, there's this bike committee." Yeah, which is a story I think about how many people got involved through the Ken network in some way. So with the 6 meetings, I don't know if I officially became a member at the end of 2017 or the beginning of
we're so
2018.
by the books.
I would have to check. But it's been exciting to work and get to work with committee members in the city on a number of different engineering and evaluation projects and see how the procedures of that have changed. And it's also exciting to see how the city has changed to have a much bigger mobility staff to really be able to tackle more of these things so that we're playing very much an advisory role. And they've been working with Lena and Tom for quite a while, and it'll be bittersweet to see Tom step back as chair, but it's also, I think, an exciting time with all of our great new members who have, I think, really refreshed a lot of energy. I know pandemic was a trying time for everyone on the committee, and I think it's really exciting to see new members coming out of that and really thinking about how we can continue to reshape biking in Somerville for the better, particularly now that we have a bike network plan. So I'm really excited to see the new efforts of our committee grow around the implementation of that plan, and excited to continue to be part of a community and a committee that I've been invested in for a while, and see biking in Somerville continue to improve and get better, largely thanks to the efforts of people on or at this meeting.
Thank you, Ted. That over to Paul.
I'm Paul. I've been on the committee since June. I volunteered mostly to give the longer term members the space to do this shuffle and have a break. So if anyone else is interested, that's fine. I'm emotionally attached to being the secretary, but I am very much interested in supporting the work of the committee, and I do a lot of, or I am very excited about all the infrastructure that the city is being built, and I do some work organizing events to promote awareness of infrastructure, and I would to be secretary would be a great way for me to support some of the efforts that make the creation of that infrastructure possible. And I think that's about it.
Thank you, Paul, everyone. All right, so with that, we'll open it up for any committee discussion, and kind of procedurally, just so folks know what happens next is after any discussion, we'll have a motion for the committee to endorse this slate of officers. I think we do just one motion for all at once. I see no reason to do otherwise. The committee is in no way obligated to accept this particular slate or anything like that, though it would be my suggestion that they do so. So with that, let's open it up. Any questions, comments from anyone? Yeah.
I'll just say one thing. Paul, remember when you thought I was crazy for riding that giant cargo bike around like 8 years ago? Now look at you. This is great.
It takes a lot of exposure to change.
Paul is my greatest success story, I think, so thank you, Paul.
Love to hear it. Cool. All right. Seeing nothing else, I will make a motion that the committee adopt Lena as chair, Ted as vice chair, and Paul as a secretary. Do we have a second? Seconded by Ian. All in favor, please say aye, raise your hand, otherwise make your vote no.
I,
All right.
You can vote for yourself.
Quick voting for everyone. All right, with that, the slate is accepted. I will continue to chair through this meeting, and then we'll hand it over to our new slate of officers, and we'll, we're really looking forward to their leadership in the new era. All right. The agenda, let's see, we had some mention of sustainable. We also suggest that we save that until the city update and perhaps get into our engineering review. Ted, especially if you're ready to help lead that. Just to set expectations for timing, our primary focus is the Elm Beacon connector for the web bridge replacement on here, because we might get to it, but definitely our main focus on our engineering timelines is the Elm Beacon connector. Part of the city timeline, especially because Adam is the, I believe, main product designer is here.
So far.
yeah, sure. I'm just pulling up the slide link. So Tom, if you maybe want to,
Yeah, if it's convenient, I can share my screen, Ted, as we go.
yeah. So I think if you want to share the plans, I could just verbally go through our comments kind of segment by segment. So I think overall, looking at the slide deck, I think our comments started with slide 2.
Cool. And yeah, just to set expectations, kind of go through, I think Ted will kind of raise items of interest that engineering had flagged, but members feel free to raise anything as we go.
Yeah, so I think we're overall, first of all, a big thanks to the city for coming up with these plans and revisiting this project. I know that this is a stretch of road that we've talked about for a while. And honestly, looking back in emails and city plans, I think I initially saw Mike Tremblay had a set of plans for this going back a while. So it's really exciting to see this come to fruition. So overall, this segment of Elm Street, which is what we call like Elm, Ad Beach, and Willow, given that that's the big intersection here, or big intersections, I should say. We were delighted by the lane narrowing a bit, because this is actually a pretty wide street cross section for this city. I think our main comments were really thinking about how to prioritize access to Willow Ave, since there's a bike lane and it's a nice accessible way to get to the community path if somebody doesn't need to go into Davis Square fully. So, you know, we were concerned about this tan painted area, which is supposed to be a pedestrian space. So we weren't sure if it was in the plans, but we would suggest bollardization to prevent cars from encroaching and continuing to use that as a slip lane. That was a big thing. We would also suggest it related to prioritizing Willow, further traffic calming. So there were 2 crosswalks noted here. We weren't sure if the intent was to make either or both raised, but given the proximity to bus stops and given the bike infrastructure here, raised crossings and or rapid flash beacons would be kind of ideal, because we were thinking about how somebody could make a left turn from Beach onto Elm comfortably, given the turn lanes here. And just thinking about maybe if we use those raise crosswalks to slow traffic down a little bit, that might make that turn a bit more comfortable. In addition to potentially thinking about maybe adding in a cross bike along parallel to the crosswalk, say closest to Willow, right where Ace Wheelworks is now. So those are some ideas that we had here, and we'd also be supportive of a bike slip lane through that reclaimed pedestrian space to facilitate making turns. We weren't sure if that was necessarily part of the plan or kind of implied, but overall, I think, yeah, we're excited we're excited for this. So those are our comments on the segment. Do we want to open this up for questions segment by segment and comments?
Yeah, I was thinking as we go each intersection. I think there's maybe like 3-ish intersections in particular to flag.
Yeah.
So with that, I see hands from Alex, then Ian, then Catherine Lang.
The city staff, I didn't ask this at the open house, but is there enough turning vehicles that meet the minimum to actually make, usually there's a minimum to require a turning lane. Is there actually enough to make that minimum?
So there's a lot of discretion for that kind of thing in terms of like engineering best practice. So I haven't actually like cross-referenced that with the MUTCD or anything like that. But we do have counts and the volumes here are fairly high, and I think the general sentiment has been that those short lanes, although, fairly short, would actually provide more value than less in terms of the overall flow and safety through the intersection. But I think that's the kind of feedback that could actually, I think we're open to feedback on that kind of thing. And like, I think the lived experience is more important to us than what the correct standard is or something like that. So this was our attempt to put our best foot forward. We believe that overall there was more value there. We actually, you guys may be aware, the city line is actually at the back of the bottom of that long crosswalk, the big white rectangle. So we do have to work with Cambridge on this one. And so any changes on beach itself would be Cambridge. But we worked with them to get some initial feedback, and they were actually the ones that, in addition to our team, I think everyone was kind of on the same page that ultimately felt like there was more value in maintaining those left turn lanes. So that's not necessarily, point being, that's not necessarily something that we should or shouldn't or have to do based on, numbers in an engineering guidebook. I think that is open to what we feel is the best treatment for this intersection.
I generally would oppose turning lanes. It's kind of car infrastructure in a place we're trying to get rid of it. As someone who deals with this on Webster Ave every day for the past 10 years, it's really dicey. The simplification I would opt for over options, but that's just my feedback.
Thanks, Alex. Seer, Ian, and then Catherine, and then Lena.
So I'm gonna throw a curveball here. Some of you might know I have a almost 4-week-old at home. Those can't go on bikes. They don't have head control yet. So I've been driving a lot more, and I just bought a brand new minivan because I needed a bigger car. It's not got the best visibility on my blind spot on the right side, but it's pretty good. It's got a little camera thing when you turn the turn signal on. One of the things I've noticed driving that around Somerville, especially down on Washington Street where we just put in the cycle tracks, is trying to turn right across the cycle track, specifically at Dane Street, or I think it's Perry and Parkdale. I feel really uncomfortable that I can't see cyclists coming up the cycle track. So I don't know if it's cars parked illegally. I don't know if it's that I can't come to a full 90-degree viewing point where I stop, and like Dane Street, and I think that's going to be very similar here with Beach Street. If I show any hesitancy as a driver, because I'm, sitting there driving and I go, hey, is there anyone coming? And there's someone trying to make a left turn from the other side. They see that hesitation and we're a bunch of assholes. They got it. If there's a cyclist coming that I'm stopping for, that cyclist is going to get like flattened. So this kind of ties into Alex's question about the turning lanes. I think there may actually be some value there just to try and encourage people to slow down and look. But also when I'm coming down Elm Street, as a driver trying to turn right on Beach Street or as a cyclist trying to go straight, how are we avoiding conflict there? Right now, it's an unsignalized intersection. It's going to be a free for all, and I'm terrified that we are setting ourselves up for someone to get injured or killed here. And I don't want to rain on this parade. I've been looking forward to this project for 10 years since my daughter started going to daycare at 3 months old. I've been biking up and down Elm Street since then. Unfortunately, I'm actually moving to Arlington in a couple of months, so I'm not even going to be biking in Somerville at that point by the time we get this done. But I'm really concerned about the conflict areas that we are creating here, that especially unsignalized intersections and knowing how people are going to treat them. If I'm on my bike 3 months ago, I would have just been like, I have right away, I'm going through, it's fine. And now having that driven or the more experience behind the wheel, I'm like, oh shit, this is really dangerous, and I don't know what to do about that.
Just for I don't know if you guys want me to respond to that, but just, can you clarify is there like a place in particular, Ian, that you're talking about, or?
So if you're going left to right on Elm Street here, heading
Yeah.
towards Union Square,
Okay.
but then you want to make a right turn on Beach Street. There's a decent amount of space. You've done a really good job of trying to give a car turning right the ability to come to a 90-degree junction with the cycle track. But there's not actually enough room there. It looks like it's going to be about the same amount of room that you have down at Washington Street at Dane Street when you're trying to go towards Kirkland Corner and take a right on Dane Street. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yep.
And that particular intersection, I feel, is so much less safe now than it was before, when I just said, YOLO, I take the lane. Because now I'm off to the side, it's like 4 feet buffer between the cycle track and turning cars. That's not enough space. The car is, what, 15 feet long on average? So I can't fully turn in there without blocking the cycle track, but I don't want to fully turn in there and block the cycle track without checking the cycle track is clear. So as a cyclist, as a driver, I don't know what the correct answer is here. But I've seen, like, I don't know that this design as is actually better than what we have right now. I think it is different and it may be better, but I'm also concerned that we shift the conflict points to ones that are less obvious. Because right now, when I'm biking on Elm Street, I am in the middle of the damn lane, and too bad, I don't care. But now I'm forced over to the right side where I'm less visible, especially around those conflict points. And I don't know what the answer is there.
So your concern is about, like in this one example, it's a bike going eastbound in the protected bike lane to the right side of the page, and a car going in the same direction, and that conflict point of the potential right, like the right hook essentially.
The right.
I think
forward-
Ian raised two conflict points. One is
Yeah.
what you just discussed, but there's also the car, if you have a motorist who yields to a bike in the bike lane there on the right side. And you also have a car in the left turning lane, turning on,
Yeah.
making a left onto Beach. It may be that the motorist gets distracted by the car, misinterprets the car stopping to check for motorists as yielding the right of way, and the car turning left guns it and careens the cyclist proceeding through the Beach intersection.
These are
That
all
more or less.
Yeah, these are movements I see all the time, like cars turning all over here. It's a busy intersection. It may not be enough to signalize, that may not make sense. It's probably how script is anyways, but I am concerned about those two movements, especially because we've now shunted cyclists off to the side of the road, which is generally the right thing to do. But you're not gonna win when you're on a bike and a car T-bones you.
Let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna try to briefly transition to something actionable if we can, and then I want to make sure you hear from other folks as well. So the concern is specifically around kind of daylighting primarily. Is that accurate? Then yeah, relatedly, partly wondering if it would make sense to move this bus stop elsewhere, and that would make it easier to further narrow the turn or to move the conflict zone.
Or daylighting or hardening. It'd be hard to harden that much more because the crosswalk is right there. But if you could harden that to really force cars to make a really hard right turn, but again, Dane Street, Washington Street, Dane Street is kind of like that. And it still terrifies me. I actually don't drive that way if I can help it.
Okay,
That's how bad it is.
I see, yeah, okay, I get what you guys are saying at this point, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
So
to
I think,
be-
yeah,
Sure.
Or it's a lack of traffic
One final
control,
comment from Ted,
too.
and then we'll move on to the members.
yeah. So I think it could also be that there's a lack of traffic control there. So in those situations, it could be ambiguous who has the right of way, let alone the daylighting piece.
Even if it was a traffic light, unprotected left turn. Oh,
Yeah.
the person stopping for me, I'm gonna go and not realize there's a bike on the other side.
Thanks. Let's hear from Catherine and then Lena and then Kat.
Thanks. I agree with the concerns that were just raised, and also I'm generally excited about this as a design. The crosswalk across Beach Street feels like a huge improvement for pedestrians. Otherwise, you're just really stranded out there in the middle of car world. So that's a huge improvement from that perspective. I'm interested in commenting on the new pedestrian space and how bikes might interact with that. Um, I have there's a suggestion of could there be a right turn slip lane for bikes from Beach onto Elm going towards Porter Square? And that sounds fun if you're on a bike and sounds like a nice, graceful way to get through that. You avoid this turning. But I do foresee that being difficult where you are then, if you're on a slip lane, coming into two crosswalks and then the bus stop. If there were a bus there, that would be a pretty quick put on the brakes for the person on the bike. And then weaving then into traffic, potentially, if there's a bus there, that would happen really quickly for the biker. It seems too quick. So although it might be more of a pain for the biker to go up Beach and take a proper right turn, you would avoid some of that conflict and have a little bit more time to understand if there's a bus and people in the crosswalk. My other concern with the slip lane is, well, maybe not a proper slip lane, but just thinking if it's a ped space versus a ped and bike space, because obviously bikes will go wherever they can. And if it's just open, I fear that would take away from the whatever ped space that is and create some conflict. I'm thinking about the Harvard Square Plaza that's like above the roads, where Harvard has like events and the chairs and everything. Um, that's a ped space that I often bike through, and it's okay, but there's always the option for conflict, and I have to be hyper aware. This one's much smaller, but I like the idea of putting bollards up and making it really distinctly just peds or peds with a distinct bike space. So, yeah, just thinking about potential conflict with a slip lane coming out of that. Thanks.
Thanks for raising that. Yeah, we definitely love to hear other reactions to potential or bicycle slip lane. Lena.
Yeah, I wonder, so one thing I love is just having the protection on Elm, because right now it is really intimidating to be biking on Elm and have people really close to you, drivers really close to you. I experienced it on my way here. And so that, like, I just like that it's gonna extend how I, like, the sigh of relief that I breathe when I get on Holland. Now that Holland Street has protected, bollar protected bike lanes. And I, I have no, this is just such a weird, I mean, what if you kept the slip lane as the road and like tried to square it up with Willow and actually flip it so that the pedestrian space is on the other side? I don't know, like, I have no idea if that's like completely out there, and I don't know, just making, but to that's just a wild idea that I have no idea what the repercussions for anything else in that area would be engineering wise, but that's also an option, because that's a road currently. You could keep that road and change the other ones. I like the current bus relocation of the one on Beach. And then also, to Catherine's point as well, if for me, it's like sort of like, I get the right hook thing, like I see that for sure, but I'm also thinking about like people who wanna go from Beach to Willow on a bike, and if you could put like a little bike path through that pedestrian space, a very clearly marked thing, just to kind of square it up and get someone closer to the like approach to Willow. Like guide bicyclists not to have to go up, make a turn onto the road and then, negotiate your left, something that could get you closer to that crosswalk, and then maybe, yeah, RRFBs, so that you could activate your little beacon and be like, ah. And then you can point at it when they don't stop, but just something to square up that, like, because it stinks to have, and that was like one of those 90s S's that like people did in the graph paper, by the way, those like, right? Come on. The little S's. I don't even know what you call it, but sorry. And I think what that does currently is just sort of demarcate what people currently do, which is like face off against each other. And so like, that's a little, that stinks. And I wonder if you could square it off and you could use the slip lane as the real road, then you could make it more of a cross intersection and not this extendo thing. But if that's just weird, but like if that can't happen, I think it would be nice to facilitate bicyclists getting as close to Willow on the straightaway as possible without having to do that double maneuver.
Yeah,
Any reaction now?
Yeah, so we did, Cambridge had thought about this before we had, which is no surprise, given that most of like the beach portion is in Cambridge. And they had actually a couple of different concepts, and one was more along the lines of what you were discussing there. So it's not crazy. It's definitely not like you, there's a lot of extra space. So where do you put the road? I think ultimately you get more sort of non-vehicle space this way, regardless of how we ultimately designate it. Because remember, there are buses that need to take that right turn, so it does make for a more awkward movement kind of.
And I like that
around,
bus lane
so.
where it is right now, or the
Yeah.
bus stop rather.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, we would, I think there's an opportunity to allow cyclists to still make a straight movement across
Yeah.
from Beach to Willow. We're less concerned about cars making that straight movement, and so I think we'd rather just reclaim more space. Our idea was to keep the short left turn lanes to kind of keep things moving a little bit. But that ultimately we'd get the most space back in this current configuration. So it's not to necessarily, there are trade-offs with each approach, but this is where we had landed in terms of what we were going to show the community there. To the point about sort of bikes maneuvering through the space, I think there's opportunity for us to get feedback on that. I think our initial take was like, yes, this would be flex posted off, but that we maybe strategically leave enough room for cyclists to get through and not necessarily say, hey, here's a clear bike lane to get around this slip lane and then across Willow, which is actually a point I want to intentionally bring up with you all in a second. But that'd be just a little bit more subtle. So if there are strong opinions on that, I think that is an opportunity for feedback and for discussion. And ultimately, like I said, everything south of that crosswalk is the city of Cambridge. So we've been working very
I didn't know
closely
it was
with
that,
them.
I didn't know it was that close.
Yeah, it's right. It depends on where you are in the corridor, but in this section, it's like
Yeah.
the back of the sidewalk on the south side, or the bottom side in the image is where the city line is. So we came up with this, or the city of Cambridge came up with a concept. We worked off of that concept. They've agreed to remove the medians that are there to make this happen. So we're working very closely together and we're all aligned. So I have no concerns about that. And working through that feedback, but that's just kind of our initial take. And we have gotten a lot of feedback from the general community of Somerville so far about like, is this a mural space? Is it planters, right? So there's a lot of interest in what we do with this
A
space.
fountain.
So, yeah, sure, whatever,
Yeah.
dream big, but yeah, like I said, ultimately, there's a lot of opportunity there, and it is ultimately the city of Cambridge's decision, so. I think there's a lot of, that's kind of our initial thought. The other thing I do want to mention while we're talking about it is that I think I heard one or two of you talk about like more clearly demarcating, maybe with like a green cross bike or a, conflict zone, the movement from Beach to Willow right next to that crosswalk. And we actually spent quite a bit of time thinking through that, and where we landed, but where I'd be interested in getting the committee's take on this is that there was one point where we were going to include that in our design, and either way, I'll actually, we're gonna reintroduce flex post so that you can bike across without, right next to the crosswalk without running into the flex post, but we ultimately decided not to put a bike lane there. Because since it is it is an unsignalized crosswalk, a bike does not have a right of way to take that left or through movement. And so we were worried about setting an unfair expectation about cyclists and comfort of cyclists being able to take that movement without really, and assuming that they have the right of way, right? So who has the right of way? The car actually has the right of way in that situation. And so we're going to maintain, where the bike crosses a side street, they have the right of way. We will maintain those at signalized intersections, depending on the light goes, you do have cyclists have the right of way at certain points. So we do maintain the green there. We're having discussions internally about what we do and why Willow and Beach versus like St. James or Elston, right? Where's the line as well? So that is something that is a discussion that we're having that I think it'd be interesting to get the committee's perspective on. So
What's the MUTCD sign for bikes do not have right of way, bikes please get off and use the crosswalk. If you get hit, it's your own fault and you won't get insurance.
you nailed it. That's the one.
Wait, what about, at Cedar Street, you've got the tiny little bike signals? The little ones, like the smallest bike signals that are out there? At Cedar Street on Mass Ave, sorry, on Mass Ave, so I
Oh,
guess
on
it's
Mass Ave,
technically
okay.
Cambridge, but it's the smallest bike signal you can get, they're all written in. Did you just like do a little, put it on that next to the ped thing and have it go off green at the same time?
We could have to signalize the whole
That
intersection.
doesn't sound active, yeah, okay.
So for bikes, you gotta bring someone.
Like a little one that can like be on the next to the ped thing.
Yeah, it's an idea, but there would obviously be more to it, but I see where it's at.
Right, with that, let me mention, I want to finish hearing from any members we haven't heard from yet.
Yeah.
Then any brief reactions to the discussion points Adam raised. And then we'll try to wrap this up and get to some other intersection as well. And also to be clear, we're not gonna talk about Webster Ave right there. Alright, let's hear from Kat.
I'll be fast. I just wanted to express support though for Catherine's point of view on that space. I think just one I found as when I'm not a biker, I'm a pedestrian with a stroller. Any shared space is really a bike space, and I don't feel comfortable there as a pedestrian. And so if it's a pedestrian space, let's make a pedestrian space. If it's bike space, then bike space. But I think if we make it both, it will be a bike space. And then two, the bus, and I've seen this a couple times of cars speeding down this street and other streets, and bikes doing that move in. Like literally saw someone getting clipped yesterday. So I just again think the slip lane sounds great, but in practice, I think taking an extra time for the turn might make everyone safer. So just supporting Catherine's statement.
All right. Let's see, other hands, I see Alex.
Yeah, also supporting the kind of pet only space that Catherine talked about and Kat endorsed. The other thing I just want to say, like, I think the solution we're talking about with a lot of these turns is just make it more awkward, tighter space for cars to turn, and we will get this kind of not having people kind of gun the left turns, which are the more dangerous ones that we want to avoid making more dangerous. So tighter space, much more tighter space, tighter turns, more uncomfortable space. It should not be comfortable to make any of these turns here.
Let's hear from Ted and then Ian, and let's all be concise as we go.
Yeah, so thanks. I'll try to be concise. I agree with the comments about the pedestrian space. Either it's going to be multi-purpose and lean towards bike, or it's going to be a dedicated pedestrian space. And I could see planters and like turning it into a little parklet actually working pretty well in this location, just given its proximity to Davis and the shopping center by Porter. So that's my thought on that. I think as much as I like the cross bikes, I do see sort of the legal argument that you raised, Adam, for not putting them in across the intersection, given that bikes don't have the right of way. I wish people, I mean, the MUTCD sign almost would be a good idea so that people understood that. Not that I
There is
love
one. I
that
was
aspect.
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Just to be clear on that, Ted, sorry to interrupt, but it's really for the city, it's not as much about the legal argument. It's really like what message are we conveying? I think that's what we want to be clear on. And I think that's where
Fair.
we see trade-offs on both sides. And that's
Got
where
it.
it could be helpful. So, but yeah, continue.
Ian,
But I
briefly.
don't know what people think about raising all three of those crosswalks because that might at least slow traffic down. And a last point would be to get rid of, if we got rid of the turn lanes, what would folks be interested in seeing there with that additional street space?
So I got two quick things. I agree with that's the point of hardening and making things difficult, but I don't know how you harden the left turn. Unless maybe you just raise the crosswalk to an uncomfortable level, but I don't know that we want to do. The other thing, I liked your explanation of why there's not a cross bike. I still hate that term, but it makes sense. My concern is, I also was a little bit confused about that until you explained it. No one else in Somerville is coming and sitting and chatting with you, to understand that. How do you make sure that education is actually landed? And I don't have an answer, but I just want to pose that to you as a. Your reasoning is sound and like, yes, that makes sense, but if I hadn't been in this room when you explained it, I would have come to this in a year and been like, what the hell, why is there not a crosswalk or a cross bike here? This is ridiculous. Somerville's a bunch of idiots. And then you're
Sounds like
standing
an
there,
outrage thing.
well, yeah, you're standing there
Disseminate that
watching
information.
traffic being like, oh, well, this is what, oh, yes, okay. So I don't know what the answer is there, but.
I don't,
I'm sure
there's
it's not the only one.
probably not an answer that's gonna satisfy you right now,
No.
right? But like, but I think like we're not gonna wait for like the state, the RMV system to catch up in terms of driver education and stuff. Like we can do outreach, and that's the kind of thing that like you guys could even help us on, is to like spread the word on things like that. I think we just have to use common sense as much as possible. And so I think for us, is the risk, like, you know, where is the risk greater is one of the ways we're thinking about this, right? Is the risk greater of if someone assumes that a cross bike is there, are there more people that is gonna think that green means a bike has the right of way? And does that lead to more conflicts? Or is the risk greater that it's not there and someone doesn't notice that a bike wants to cross, right? Like that's the way that we're thinking about this. And so really the education, it's less about education based on people's interpretation of it. How can we just work the best to make the street design work?
Makes sense.
So,
Thank you.
sorry, Tom. Yeah.
I'll add a comment and then maybe we'll move to some other intersections as well. For me, regarding crossbike, the main thing is that it should be very clear for a risk averse cyclist where they're supposed to turn and if they're supposed to make a vehicular movement versus kind of traveling within the crosswalk space. So whether that's accomplished by a cross bike, whether that's accomplished by, you know, making the flex post really hard to exit from until you're actually at the crosswalk, matters less to me. I think on balance, I'm net in favor of a cross bike, and there are cross bikes on much busier streets like Washington Street. But the main thing is that it should be, you know, somebody who doesn't know what they're doing when they're biking, there should be one very obvious thing to do, and they shouldn't have to second guess what they do.
Tom, there is a public comment in the Q&A. Do you want to take that now or wait until the end?
I think we will largely wait until the end. If they feel especially germane, we may take them earlier, but we'll generally wait until the end. All right, with that, Ted, let's move to some other intersections.
Sure.
What was the slide we wanted to look at?
So the next one would be slide 3, but I just want, oh, I see Ian answered Catherine's question in the chat. So in case anybody else also was wondering this, yes, a cross bike is another term for a crosswalk for bikes, a la what the community path across Mass Ave. So slide 3, I think we're gonna have a familiar discussion here. This is right by the Porter White Street shopping center. We had a few familiar discussions here. You know, I think there's certainly a desire to figure out how to prioritize biking northbound to Hancock Street, which is a contraflow road, and an important desire line. So we were trying to think about how we could make that left turn easier. One idea that came to mind, again, was cross bikes. You know, I think we'll run into a, it sounds like you probably also debated that. And I think
Yep.
the other familiar discussion that came up here was contraflow on White Street. Yay or nay?
With any.
Yeah.
I guess if I could just chime in quickly with, because I figured White Street was gonna be a topic of discussion. If, the contraflow direction is northbound right now, if Mawson Street becomes a two-way dead end, is that a suitable alternative to White Street, or or does White Street still provide a more direct connection to more places? Because I think our thinking was, you know, obviously it's a really big project already for us, and we're not even gonna get to all of this in this meeting, I don't think, because it's so big and there's so many changes proposed. But our thought was Mossland Street was already a more important southbound connection, that it could also serve that northbound connection. So I think that's the question I'd pose back to the committee.
Yeah, so we talked about that briefly, and that was part of the genesis of the cross bike idea, rather than a full-on commitment to making White Street contraflow. Is that like putting in the cross bikes would sort of facilitate people doing that if they wanted to. Ian, but yeah, that's as much as we got. I see Ian has a question, and I'm sure other people do too.
For White Street, if we just shut up about it and said, okay, it's just what it is, we could come back to this in a year, 5 years, whatever, and work on it. Right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
We're not like the.
It's just, no, it's not never
Okay.
White Street, it's, you know, Mossland is the primary north-south connection in this project.
I think Mossland is a great example. I wasn't even thinking of it in terms of this, but obviously it is part of this project. But if you're coming from, say, Kendall Square, I think that's a great option. If you're coming from Porter Square itself, White Street is still useful. I don't know how much traffic actually does that, or bike traffic actually does that. Maybe they just go to Beach Street, so you're all set.
I go through the parking lot.
I used to go to the parking lot and that's stuck in the parking lot, so I just contraflow on White Street and.
I'm not proud to say
Yeah.
it.
But no, that is interesting, because when I was contraflowing on White Street, it was because I couldn't go to Mossland, so. I think that's an interesting point.
All right, seeing nothing else, let's move to the next slide. Ted, do we have anything on here? Anything to flag?
Yeah.
Full stacking of Mossland.
Yep. So I just want to make sure we're not missing anything in the chat. I think everybody likes White Street, so glad we're not missing any. Appreciate the comments and glad we're not missing any questions. So Elm at Mossland. We strongly support the cul-de-sacking of Mossland. I think this is exciting, and I know we've been talking about various iterations of this for years, so it's exciting to see this happen. I think our only other suggestion here was maybe putting in some murals or art in the reclaimed space. It's a pretty cool pet shop there, so we were thinking fish. But that's all we have on this segment.
Cool. Anything else on here? And I see a hand from Catherine first. I think it was your idea about the fish from before, which I love.
It was my fish idea, and I'm glad that we're gonna stick with it. I'm wondering, just could you clarify, what is that black thing in the little Mossland Street call out in the center?
So.
Is that like a bollard?
It's like a little platform, basically. The product is called Zikla, and it's essentially like a 4 or 5 inch high rubber curb, and giant, or like, you know, Lego blocks essentially that you can place. The idea is that it would be really hard or intimidating for a car to want to drive through, but that it is the right shape for a fire truck's wheels and like sort of the base of that to go over, so that they could navigate through and we could maintain fire access, while a car would look at it and go, yeah, I'm not going to make that. So That's the idea. It's like a, yeah, big rubber platform.
Okay, cool. Wow, I didn't know that existed. That's amazing. Shout out to the city. Do we have any other ones of those in the city or in Cambridge as an example?
We don't yet. I don't think Cambridge does, but actually, the city of Everett has a couple. They're actually using them as bus boarding platforms right now.
Yeah.
It's the same product, but we would
Okay.
just arrange it in a different shape because of the Lego block nature.
Cool. That's amazing.
Cool.
My only last comment is just, I assume you'll do this, but just making it really obvious if you're on a bike that you can pass through that space and that these obstacles are for motor vehicles and not bikes.
Yeah, we would likely strike that green as shown, and so if there are, you know, preferences, I think it's easy for everyone to keep the cyclists kind of on the bike lanes on the edge. But if there are thoughts on better places for that to go, I think we're open to.
Hear from Ian and then
Will
Alex.
the, oh, sorry.
Just a quick question, regarding bike lanes, if you're going north on Mossland, there's not a clear and obvious path shown here. It's obvious to me how you would go, north and then make a left to go towards Davis Square. Is that gonna be, that fourth leg gonna be painted green or some other obvious, like, bikes turn left here?
That's a good question. We don't have one now because there is no connection across to Cedar.
Yep.
And so that was why I left that out, but let me think about that one a little bit more.
You
I don't have
may-
a hard answer for you right now.
Let me propose a curving green path, really hardening or doubling down on the idea, don't go contraflow and cedar because you're not supposed to. Now, if you ever change that, that gets annoying, you gotta rip that up, but,
Yeah,
um,
I see what you're saying, yeah.
you know, I am concerned this is going to result in more people contraflowing on cedar. I also don't know that I have any good answers for that, but just making it clear to cyclists how to go north and exit. I assume this traffic light will be updated as well.
The what?
The traffic light, I assume, will be updated as well.
Yes, and it sounds like you guys haven't dug into that proposal too much and don't plan to tonight, but I was gonna mention that we will keep the phasing for this intersection the same, and so cyclists would be expected to go during the pedestrian phase. That is not the case for the other ones on Somerville Ave, but
That's great, but it's gonna cause a lot of confusion because now I'm gonna assume I can do that.
Now we're
everywhere. So-
saying-
So,
Yeah,
good thing
yeah.
Carabino retired, you get a lot of tickets.
yeah. That's another thing we spend a lot of time talking about. Internally.
My initial reaction to that is very reasonable as long as there's reasonable signage.
Adam, what's the
your
difference
intent?
between this and the participatory budgeting version of it?
I'm not sure if I'm familiar with the participatory budgeting proposal that you're speaking of.
Yeah, the participatory budgeting one was could include raised crossings, speed humps, concrete barriers, pavement improvements on Beacon Elm Connector, specifically at the Cedar Mossland intersection.
Here in Mossland.
Yeah.
I don't know, I think, I'm not sure, I wasn't part of the building out of that proposal. So I don't know.
That's fine, that's
I
fine,
don't
I was just
know
curious.
Whatever what was referred to for that intersection. I would say more generally, like things that we were thinking about, that we'd love to do as part of this project, but don't necessarily have budget for, are like floating bus stops. So that's the first thing I think of, or like maybe turning that, you know, a little dead end to concrete eventually, but also we want to make sure this works, and we kind of like the quick build option for that particular element right now. So I think raised crosswalks, floating bus stops, those are I would say the main thing. So I can't think of off the top of my head why this location has been specifically called out for permanent improvements.
Thanks.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
With that, we move to the next intersection, which is an interesting one.
Elm at Somerville. So just since we're getting to 8 o'clock, I know the city has slides. What did we want to do, Tom?
Yeah, quick time check. Is there anything like time sensitive in the city updates that we should definitely get to tonight, or?
I think this is the more time sensitive.
All right, with that, we're going to lean into this and doing a thorough review of here. We'll also make sure that whatever comments we have, we take to a vote toward the end of the meeting. So we'll try to move efficiently. We may extend slightly past 8 p.m. Please give me a heads up if anyone has to drop off, but we'll try to be respectful of everybody's time, and we'll also make sure that we get to a vote on the comments we have as we go. With that, for this intersection, maybe Adam, you can give us a brief background on the signalization here.
Sure, yeah, so our signal proposal, really everything we're planning at this intersection is kind of interrelated in terms of like, you know, how many vehicle lanes there are, where the bike lanes are and how they move, and then how we're proposing the phasing, but the general idea is that whenever there's one vehicle turn going or vehicle movement, any bike movement or crosswalk that can go where they're not conflicting, you know, it's not like a right turn from Elm at the same time as that crosswalk on the left side is going. The idea is that we're allowing as many modes to move through as possible within each movement. And so that's the general idea here. We did give the slip lane a long and hard look and ultimately felt like we need to fully reconstruct this intersection to make that piece safer. For example, one of the things that we can do if we maintain the slip lanes concurrent configuration in phase one there is we can restrict right turns entirely from taking cars from taking that right from Somerville heading towards Porter onto Elm. And that allows us to allow all bikes to go for that whole green time that cars have the green, and it allows all pedestrians crossing that crosswalk to go at the same time.
So you're saying if you wanted to go up Elm Street as a car, you would have to use a slip lane?
Yes, rather than having the option. We're treating it essentially like if we had a straight and a right turn lane, more or less. So we did look long and hard about like combining those two into one lane and like reversing the slip lane potentially or closing it off, but ultimately we felt like the thing that would you know, result in the least trade-off, or you know, the trade-offs that we felt were more appropriate in terms of moving people and keeping this intersection safe was what we have proposed here. And actually taking advantage of that slip lane to kind of help keep people moving and etc. So this is the proposal, you know, feel free to dig into it and think, you know, if you guys haven't already, kind of mull over how you feel about it. But I think one of the nice things about what we call protected concurrent, where you do have like cars, bikes, and pedestrians going at the same time, is that you can see the left turns for bikes. They get their own dedicated time to take a two-stage left turn, which in my opinion is pretty nice, and something as we build out more protected bike infrastructure is going to become only more important. You can actually put a dedicated bike signal right next to the crosswalk in that case, and they both run at the same time, and you get, as long as the crosswalk is on, to for a grid to make that left turn. And really, we don't have almost any of that infrastructure anywhere in Somerville right now. So this is a way to start providing dedicated safe left turns for bikes at signalized intersections in Somerville.
See him from Catherine, and then maybe Ted, you have any initial engineering comments for context.
Totally.
Sure, thanks. Overall, again, I feel excited about this. Are the bike lanes on Elm, do you anticipate those having flex posts or anything?
Yes, anywhere there is a hatched white buffer or a hatched
Yeah.
yellow buffer, actually, in this case as well, we would put flex posts. So exact
Okay.
locations TBD, but you can assume that there would be flex posts in all of those areas.
Okay, thank you. And then second question, this protected left turn you're talking about from Elm onto Somerville going towards Union Square, I take that all the time, so I'm really interested in how it will work. This two-step left turn you're talking about is reminding me of an Inman Square, that redesign, right? If you're coming down, what the roads are, but a left at the pharmacy going down. That sounds like exactly what they have there, and I am so used to now being in the car lane and taking a left turn. Can you tell me one more time how it is safer and better for bikes to do this wider swing to take the left turn?
Sure, yeah, so think if you're coming down Elm Street, you can sort of yield to any pedestrians that might be in that crosswalk as you're coming down, and then you can sort of station yourself in that area, that's next to the crosswalk. Yeah, if you kind of keep going down, or as the mouse, right, like there. And so you get into that area right away, and then you get a green essentially at the same time as the left for Elm get to go still, but rather than being in the car lane, you're 20 feet away from the nearest car. You have a very short 20-foot crossing, and then you can get right into that protected bike lane, essentially with the same amount of time that cars have.
So Adam, I think there's a bike signal there, right? That's concurrent with the phasing
There
of
would
the
be,
traffic light.
yeah, there would be a
Yeah.
bike signal essentially right next to where the crosswalk, the pedestrian signal head is right now, is the idea.
Nice.
So you'd be
Okay.
making a left in parallel with the cars making a left,
Correct.
but separated in
With the
space.
Yeah, fully separated, yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Ted, anything to add?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you. That was a great question. So thank you, Catherine, and Adam, thank you for going through the signal phasing, because there's a big part of this. I think overall, we're totally supportive of what we just went over with the removal of conflict between movements like that. I think the part that we spent the most time talking about was this right turn in the slip lane, and just the concern that that right turn has been legal for so long, there's going to be a lack of compliance with vehicles making with the right turn prohibition. That said, I don't think we had a great answer other than to think about how we could making that soon to be illegal right turn as uncomfortable as possible, so it doesn't happen. We had talked about other ways with that, where you could potentially, I think it was it phase one, where we were trying to think about different ways to handle that with the phasing, but didn't necessarily have a great answer. So maybe extra consideration to making not only the prohibition, but making it seem like it's also an uncomfortable right turn to try to make.
Sam, from Ian?
Two comments on this slip lane and returns. One, is the signal for Somerville Ave heading left towards Portis Way, would that be changed to a straight green arrow or just straight red, green, yellow arrow or a ball?
Hadn't thought that far yet, but I think it could become a straight, like a through only arrow.
Yeah, if right turns are prohibited, would really encourage changing the signal itself.
Yeah.
I don't think that's too hard. It's not a new phase or anything, just.
Yeah, we will be, the goal is to do a lot of like signal work here. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Cool, so yeah, I would really
Reasonable.
encourage that
Okay.
and make it as visible further back, because that's gonna be another cue for, oh, wait, I can't make it right there, make it right here. Now, what kind of hardening is being done on this incredibly shallow right turn that we're forcing everyone to take to go up Elm Street? Specifically with the concern for cyclists that are proceeding straight and then making the right, or how do you encourage cyclists to not go in the slip lane, because now that's less desirable? I've nearly been right hooked by shallow right turns here so many times. This is again, an area I've been biking for 10 years. This design that we have here is awesome and I love it. But then just off to the right side, there's nothing there, and I'm really concerned that we've just changed the traffic pattern there in a way that is going to cause a lot of conflict. So I don't expect you to have an answer right now, but I want to present the concern.
I'll take a quick stab or so. I know we're running short on time. But yeah, like I said, we did spend quite a bit of time thinking about this. Actually, Lily on our team, one of our newer staffers, bikes regular in this area. So she raised that exact point. So we did think about this quite a bit, and we did even consider fully reversing the slip lane, but ultimately determined the long story short is we need to reconstruct this intersection, and just Craigie is placed in a really terrible spot to be able to do a heck of a lot else. So right now we have no proposal. I can commit to at least looking back at whether or not we could throw a few strategically placed flex posts to do any kind of hardening here. But ultimately it's reconstruction that I think that's the only thing that's really going to help solve that problem. And in the meantime, in the shorter term, I think we can see what hardening we can do.
What's the rough crystal ball of when reconstruction is even possible? Is it
No
10 years
timeline,
out, or-
not in the next 5 years, I can say that, yeah.
That's my concern.
Time out,
Is we do
yeah.
a lot of really cool stuff and then,
Yeah,
well, we didn't get to that, it's fine, and then someone gets hurt.
yeah,
So,
understood.
okay, no, that makes sense, thank you.
All right.
I mean, could we do something like a speed hump right before that crosswalk there with that?
It's not the crosswalk, it's actually
Yeah.
not, there is a speed hump, basically, it's a raised
Yeah,
crosswalk to get.
Oh, yeah,
into-
that's right. Okay.
My kids like to call the slip lane the bumpy way, regardless of if we're driving or biking, it is
Yeah.
incredibly uncomfortable, but that's after you've right hooked the cyclist, so you have 2 bumps to get into the slip lane.
Yeah. Is green, is restriping that bike lane there a possibility? I know it might be a
It's
little bit beyond
already,
the scope.
it's already green.
Okay.
Yeah, this is an old aerial, so I wouldn't
Oh.
go with that, yeah.
It's painted every year on Somerville Ave, it's painted. I think we've done a good job with the entrance to the slip lane, it's just now you're forcing all right turning traffic to take it.
Mhm.
Which is changing the design, obviously, in a way that. I think, personally, I think needs more consideration, but I understand why you have presented what you have so far.
There's a question in the Q&A about for the cyclists heading, I guess, southeast on Somerville Ave. Where do they wait before making the left onto Elm Street? Those are separate phases, right?
Yes, so that, the one that was just, that one right there. Yeah, they wait on the curb. It's not ideal. We don't have any more room because of that curb extension. So I think if there's a cyclist who wants to go straight and a cyclist who wants to go left and they happen to have the green at the same time, they do have to navigate that space. And I think the hope is that there is enough that they can negotiate it appropriately. And so I think, one thing we can consider as being strategic about flex posts is actually a place we want to maybe space them further apart or something. Is that worth the trade-off? So yeah, we just literally don't have any more space there. And so in some cases, in that one in particular, we do a left turning cyclist, or a through cyclist would be expected to wait behind or negotiate around a left turning
It's a
one.
wide sidewalk there, could you do like Porter Square sidewalk duck handle?
In the long term, yes, but because it's a quick build project, there's no construction in the scope for this one right now.
And that would be again a 5-year plus timeline, that's not something.
Yeah, unless,
Term.
unlikely, if we are gonna make any, like Alex had flagged that we do have some participatory budgeting, potential funding if it gets voted on, to make some construction upgrades, but that would likely start with things like raised crosswalks. Before it did things like that, so I wouldn't feel comfortable committing to that anytime in the near future.
All right, with that, let's move on to what I think is the last intersection of interest. And also just note that I did not hear any reactions of its overall skepticism of the signalization, if folks feel otherwise, speak up. Also noting that for members in the chat, I put where I'm gathering our comments so far, trying to focus on kind of the high level themes, as well as areas where we disagree, but I felt we're leaning one way. So for example, while not everybody favored pedestrian space versus slip lane, my read was that majority of the committee preferred pedestrian space there. All right, with that, Ted.
Sure. I'll go quickly through this because it's after 8. So just something to point out for folks, it's great to see the second, so this is Beacon, at Somerville Ave, and it's great to see this get addressed, and it's also great to see the right turn lane explicitly called out, heading from Beacon to Somerville Ave to go southeast towards Boston. So right now, technically, the way it's configured, you could technically have 2 left turn lanes. Cars do occasionally do that. So getting rid of that and making this explicit has really allowed so many other improvements here. So it's great to see that. So we're happy by that. We're happy to see the narrowing of Oxford and the curbside bike lane. So we don't really have any particular concerns or discussion points here.
Yeah, with that, any other questions or comments, Iselina? And also just note that some members had raised kind of access around here and trade-offs around, should it be wider for easy bike access, narrower for cars? So if the committee has any feedback there, that could be valuable. Lena?
What about the left on the Beacon onto Somerville Ave? Cause that's like, that's primarily how I interact with it. I'm usually coming back from Beacon and have to take a left onto Somerville Ave to go toward the border. Like, is a bicyclist meant to? Yeah, what are we supposed to do there?
If there's enough space, I'd say, you know, this is a you know, kind of an interesting use case, because we actually get bike queues here, right? So I would say the first cyclist to go in could go in front of the crosswalk and wait in that curb extension area. And then you'll get a green bike signal at the same time as the left for Beacon goes. So similar to what I was describing in for Elm at the Somerville Ave intersection there. And the crosswalk would turn on too, and then the left for Beacon for cars, bikes could go across, and then take that left there. And then the crosswalk on that right side would be on as well. And that would be, I think 15 to 20 seconds. And then bikes, you know, the idea is that a bike wouldn't wait on the crosswalk, but if there was a queue, they would have to wait further down the bike lane, but that, you know, there's enough time that people could get through in one go.
Are there like separate signal plans that go along with any of these?
There will be, yes.
Okay.
What we have so far, I have I developed a whole signal analysis or traffic analysis and signal proposal slide deck that's available on the project webpage if you guys really want to nerd out and dig in.
It's there now?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
oh yeah. Yeah, this is a very you know, bike friendly crowd, unsurprisingly, but we do have a lot of people that we knew were going to ask questions about Mossland Street and what we were going to do about the traffic. And so I personally spent a lot of time crunching numbers and figuring out how this was all going to work if we were to move, you know, 3,000 cars a day off of Mossland Street. So there's a very detailed analysis if you want to dig in.
I just like like where they show the arrows for each phase, just because it's like helpful. And it must be annoying to like do them on like a map rather than just showing the things you have to do already.
It's all good.
It's
worth it. Yeah.
But if it's up there, then it's easy just to see. I just like, it helps me understand. So I don't have to ask so many nebulous questions about, okay, when this.
That's the point. That's why I did it.
Thank you, Adam.
Ian?
I think this intersection, the way the bike lanes or cycle tracks, wherever they are designed, you might run into a similar problem as Elm at Somerville, where a cyclist, say, trying to turn left onto Beacon Street is now blocking cyclists that have turned left off of Beacon Street, trying to go straight.
Yeah.
Is that kind of just, that's what we've got? This looks like there's a lot of room here, but also I don't know how much room there really is here.
It is kind of what we've got. Like, there's not quite enough room to provide, like you can see on the south side, there's a bigger curb extension there. And so that was the side that ultimately we decided to prioritize for, like, a cyclist could kind of get out of the way if they're going through on eastbound, and like a right turning cyclist heading from, like, you know, Somerville out of Porter onto Beacon would theoretically have enough room to go around. So we did kind of have to pick like which side had more space.
Did you consider putting a bike box on, is that Acadia Place? I've never.
Oh, yeah.
Because that parking lot is signalized. I don't know if it's, not Acadia. Directly across from.
Adelaide, like right across from Beacon, right?
Yeah, another A.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's a city road or a parking lot, but it's signalized. So could you have bikes queue up, like make a right and queue up in there and then go straight onto Beacon Street? That kind of messes up the the cycle track over on the left side of Beacon Street, but. An idea, that's all I've got.
Okay.
Oh, and then one other silly thing. Why'd you put more on-street parking? We don't need more. What, there's none there now. Why'd you put some in? This isn't what we want in Somerville. That's all.
I was like visioning those like precast concrete curbs this whole time. I guess they are, like if it's parking protection, but
Cast iron.
precast,
titanium,
million
whatever.
ton,
Yeah.
multi-ton,
Well, actually, about those, that new on-street parking, it's kind of in an intersection. Is that really what we want to
do
be
you wanna
doing?
invite it?
I mean, I
What
applaud the
if people
idea of more
park?
parking where we can, but it's also kind of useless in terms of a lot of who's using it, and also it's in the negative intersection, which is just weird.
Yeah, I think either way, like we still believe in the proposal, or like, you know, kind of where the lines are drawn, like that's the right side for the curb extension and everything, and where we want the lane, so I think if it wasn't used, we could always just stripe it down the line if it was completely useless.
Okay.
If there's parking available and people are using it appropriately, like, or like, I guess, doesn't matter, like. If there's parking available, they will use it, so I think we are kind of at the stage where like, well, we do have some more space, we're taking a lot on Elm. We don't feel like it's a safety impediment, so we'd rather show it.
Is the bike lane flex posted even with the striped buffer, or is the buffer just visual?
There will be flex posts
On the
at
bike.
certain places within all of that buffer space, right? So like, obviously. We're not gonna like box the car in so that it can't move. It may not be like along the very edge of the buffers in all of those spaces, but there will be flex. Those are all intended to be flex posted off in some way to protect the bike lane.
All right, so with that, seeing that it's 8:10, let's take up to 3 more comments, members. If there are any public comments, please indicate so in the Q&A. And then the committee will move to vote on this. And of course, further individual comments are welcome via Summer Voice, etc. Any other questions, comments on this before we move to vote?
So I guess my question would be for the city, what is our best plan with the feedback? You know, do you want us to turn this into a formal letter? What exactly are we gonna vote on, or what should the next step be?
Cool. So my suggestion, Ted, is that we are voting to endorse this statement, which I realize is a fairly long one. But please do take a moment to read through this. What we actually submit to the city, Ted, you and I can work on kind of clarifying this, you know, draw a little arrow on somewhere is needed to make sure we're expressing the committee's intent. But I do want to make sure that the committee is kind of clear on the policy statement that we're recommending, especially the areas where there were, you know, where well-meaning people may disagree, like, you know, cross bikes and slip lanes and pedestrian space and all and so on.
As much as possible?
Yes. So yeah, appreciate any clarification typos, but also if the intent is clear, I will be comfortable with this. So yeah, take a moment to read through that. Let me know if there are any concerns. I do not see any public comment at this time, so please take a moment to read through this, members. And if there are no concerns, we will move to vote on this. Anyone cannot see, can scroll down on my screen. Specifically, I wanted to again call out regarding the pedestrian plaza, that while we had some members express different ideas here, on balance, my read is that the committee prefers prioritizing pedestrians there.
I'll make the motion to endorse.
Okay, last call for any questions or comments before we. All right, hearing none, do we have a second for Kath's motion? Seconded by Ian. All members in favor, please raise your hand, say aye, otherwise make your vote known.
I
All right, with that, the motion passes. Ted, perhaps you and I can work together to, I don't know,
sure.
if we have any typos and make sure that what we submit is clear. All right, I believe that is everything we'll get to tonight. The city update slides will be shared out. Last call for any pressing items. And I really do mean pressing.
Yeah, so those slides have been shared with everyone. For the most part, they're self-explanatory, so let me and Rishika know if you have any questions. Take a look at the upcoming outreach opportunities and reach out if you're interested in any of those. And then very quickly, there was a question last time about budget for giveaways, safety equipment, swag, things like that. Short answer is yes, mobility should be able to help. I'm not able to give an exact number, but I would ask the committee to think about what are the types of things that you might want for giveaways, and come back to us at a future meeting, and then we can kind of go from there.
Oh, I have a pressing item. Well, you have one too. You do yours first, because I want mine to be last. You do yours first.
I think we might be thinking the same thing, so you go.
All right, well, we all should give Tom like a big hand and honor and thank you so much for leading the bike committee. And thank you.
There's been a motion to do that.
Love it, love the procedure. All right, with that, we will adjourn the meeting.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, folks, and have a great night.
Have a great night. Thank you, Tom.
Bye.
Care.